welcome to the Tumble Taker Tavern. I am Jim, aka Argentwind, and I'm your host for DM&D here on the Tumble Tankard YouTube channel. And hey, folks, good to see you all again. If you are anyone currently watching, so we'll just be recording this, and you'll get to see it later on. But today we have a topic that was suggested by a viewer. And I'm not sure who that was exactly, but it came to me via our main producer, it ends. And we're talking about red herrings. Um, these are things I've mentioned a number of times in previous shows. I mean, how red herrings pop up and how you can do there. But the question was more on like how do you do red herrings, or how do you make them a part of the session or anything else? And so I'm kind of going a little bit over. We're going to talk about how to create them, how to insert them into the game, and then why you might want to do this intentionally. um, and then also I'm going to start off here with a little bit of history lesson where red herrings came from. Red herrings actually were a term coined by a William Cobbett in 1807, an English columnist who actually discussed. He basically posted in one of his columns a story about a crate of herring being used to lure hunting hounds away from a hare. And this was actually a metaphor for a commentary he was making about the press, essentially, literally. Criticizing the English press for reporting the defeat of Napoleon before it actually happened. So people were kind of like getting excited and everything else. That was drawing in views and reads and everything else like that by reporting something that hadn't happened yet. And so it was a red herring. Just disguised what was really happening to everybody for something that was not true. And so the idea of a red herring is literally to draw your attention away from something. Is why it's there. And so we'll get into the whys of that a little later on here, but you may have some ideas around that already. But the how to do it, and there's a number of ways, very simple ways to make it happen. But one of the easiest ways to make a red herring pop up for your players in a game is rumors. As hearing people over talking in a bar, hearing a couple of guards at the gate talking about something that's going on in the city. It probably doesn't get related to anything the party is currently doing. They may have a main quest they're following. I mean, they're trying to get leads on something that's happening here, but they're going to hear this rumor from somebody, and that could be a situation where, oh, that sounds interesting. We should check that out. Or, hey, when we get some time, we should find out what's going on here. And so it's a way to sort of like draw their attention away from something and get it out there. And rumors are a great way to do that. So you can have, again, a couple of guards talking. You can have people talking in a tavern. You can have a shopkeeper who's like, hey, have you heard about this? Or if a party is asking somebody for information about something they're following, you may say, well, I heard about that, but there's this other thing I heard about. And so, again, anything that you can get to kind of throw a rumor out there and get the players something else to focus on for a little bit there is a way you can do that. Another way to set up red herrings are a bounty board, or a trouble board, or a mission board, or a quest board, whatever you want to call it. But it's somewhere like usually, oftentimes, a literal board, or a wall in a tavern, or a board outside of a magister's office or a constable's station or something like that, where they have like lost dog, or bounty for information about this criminal, or a wanted dead or alive for this criminal, or just any information about this situation, or somebody saying, hey, I'm looking for this. And so those can be all little seeds or little red herrings that the players can pick up on and go, interesting, we could earn some money by doing that. Or, hey, this person might know something about this thing. If we bring them what they want, they might give us some information we need. But again, it's something to put it out there to a player, and it may or may not have any bearing on what's going on here. Probably doesn't have any bearing to what's going on here, but it gives the player something else to focus on for a moment, and breaks up what's going on here. Delving a little bit into the why there, but we're going to come back around to that a little bit later on. Another way for you to have red herrings pop up is random encounters. This could be something that, as we're traveling on the road, something happens. And it could be something that's just, hey, you're attacked by bandits. Where do these bandits come from? Not related to their main quest, but it's something that they can focus on in the now based on a random encounter they have. A random encounter could also pop up from something like they find some loot in a dungeon somewhere, or they find a dead body buried in a shallow grave, and it's got something on them, some sort of symbol tattooed on their arm, or some kind of emblem on their clothing. Um, and that can be something that, hey, what is this thing? Again, it's another red herring. So that random encounter or that random thing they come across in loot or anything else like that can be a full-on extra side quest. It can be something that's takes them off in a totally different direction somewhere. But again, that random counter is something for the party to deal with or choose to ignore if they want. Again, a red herring should never be something that's going to be vital. If they don't do it, they miss that they're gonna lose out on something they need for the story. It should never be something that if they don't have it, it will be to the detriment of what their goals they're trying to achieve. But it could also be something that might help them unintentionally. A great example of that, uh, um, and I'll give you one in fiction, and I'll give you one in our game in our game in the game that I'm running there on Saturdays. So in fiction, in Ready Player One, um, I love this audiobook. Will Wheaton's the narrator. It's a treasure trove of 80s nerd trivia and everything else. Well, there's a big event the main character does that he thinks is part of this whole thing he's trying to do, and it completely has no. It, like he's convinced it has something to do with the overall plot. He's trying to find this thing, and he's on the right track. This has got to be a clue. This has got to be important, and he accomplishes it. He gets a reward, but nothing happens. Nothing resolves. Nothing leads him to the next thing that he needs for his main quest. But that thing that he gets is vitally important to succeeding in the end. Without that, he would have failed. And so a really cool thing of this, like this red herring side quest thing that he gets becomes something that's super important down the road. In our game, early on in the campaign, pretty early, the one of the players bought a dollhouse with these very realistic looking dolls. It was literally a random item on a site that I used to generate store inventory. It was one of the trinkets that popped up there, a dollhouse with realistic looking fairy dolls, and they insisted on buying it. And a little ways down the road, I was like, huh, well, what we're looking for some little things to happen here, kind of some filling some time as they're in between adventures. Well, okay, I'm going to throw this thing out here. That dollhouse had something important. Those little fairy dolls were actually kidnapped pixies that a hag had transformed into dolls and then left them in this store. The hag shows up to reclaim the dolls. Unfortunately, the party member had bought them. Um, and here we go with something totally unrelated to the plot, but they defeated the hag and her minions, and then the pixie queen shows up, reclaims her children that had been kidnapped, and gives the party member a favor, a token. Well, cut to a year later, the party ends up stranded in the Feywild, and now this token becomes very handy for getting out of the Feywild, as you have service from a pixie queen, so a member of the Fey courts. So uh so it's interesting that that little red herring random thing that happened there ended up being something that they ended up using very good effect later on, and led to another side quest. The guy they ended up fighting in that ultimately ended up fighting in that side quest showed up in another side quest a year later, um, based on what they'd done. So again, it can lead to some very fun encounters down the road. Um, and yes, Kyle, Will Wheaton's not so great. He's great at narration, not so great at dialogue. He doesn't do a lot of different voices or anything else like that, but he did a really good job in Ready Player One, at least. I really liked it there, but that's my bias, I know. But yeah, absolutely, he's not. I wouldn't call him a great reader for dialogue. But anyway, another way to apply red herrings to your things here, let the players come up with them. That's a weird thing to say, but a lot of times the players will draw these wild conclusions or like focus on something that's not part of the story, but they're like, "Hey, I want to know more about this thing," or who is this guy and what's going on with him?" And so an entire like side quest plot can happen because the players like latched on to something that wasn't part of your overall story, an NPC that they liked here, some item that they found they thought was more significant than it really was, or some place that they hear about and they want to go do. And so the players themselves can kind of generate their own red herrings on what they focus on and what they latch onto. It might be something that you didn't even plan for, and you're just like, "Hey, this thing here. Oh, we need to know more about that." And so that they can like literally create their own red herring in that case. So again, there's lots of different ways that red herrings can pop up in your games, either intentionally or not intentionally. Our good friend of the show, Zach, we talked about this in an interview he had on here. In his games, he always had a place called the Red Herring Inn, and it was like every town had a Red Herring Inn. And one of the things that Red Herring Inn was famous for side quests, because you could always find a trouble board with something, and players knew when they're going in there that, hey, nothing in here is going to be important to the plot, but it's going to be fun at least. So again, you can kind of establish that as part of your game where the players might realize that, hey, this is a red herring, could still be useful. It could still be a lot of fun. And so that's the idea, is that you can kind of like develop a way to let them know that this is a red herring, but it can still be cool. Um, be prepared though, you may end up having to like go off on a side quest you hadn't planned for. But that's again, there are tools for doing that. We talked about random encounters, talked about encounters and designing things and kind of improving things down the road. We talked about that in a couple of shows previously. Um, but again, players, they don't know what you know. You have a much broader picture because you're the one writing the story and working with them to develop the story and everything. So they're going to try to make connections. And sometimes what you meant to be a red herring could, based on their logic and what they figure out here, could have something to do with the main plot. And if they really make an amazing connection you hadn't thought of, go with it. There's no reason you can't just reward them for this like creative thinking or this problem solving that you maybe not have considered. Like, hey, that's a really cool idea. Yeah, that could be related here. You don't want to do that all the time because then it kind of defeats the purpose of having red herrings and side quests. But occasionally, having this little random thing that happens could lead to something that is going to help drive the story the main plot forward. And so it that it really kind of feels it lets the players connect with the game more. If they make a connection, if they make a discovery, and you just say, "Oh yeah, that doesn't mean anything," it discourages them from doing it again. So you always want to bring them in, like, "Hey, they have a great idea." You might again, GM is smiling. Maybe you kind of like, "Oh, well, sure, yeah." You kind of like to keep it to yourself here, and then kind of start writing down notes on the thing here, saying, "Yeah, make this part of this story." So, again, it's a great way to draw them in where a red herring suddenly isn't a red herring. Okay. Um, oh, good to see you, Jack. There. Good. Uh, Thought you couldn't stick around, but yeah, watch these again down the road here. Um, so why do we do this? I kind of touched a couple different reasons why you might want to do this here, but the main thing is really what William Cobbett did there. It's a distraction. Um, it can it can do a lot of different ways to distract from the overall thing. If you're in a really intense, like drawn out plot that's been going on for months here, sometimes a little bit of a side quest or a little just an oddball throwaway thing here can help can ease some of the tension maybe. It can help lighten the mood a little bit. It can shift the pacing. If you're just kind of if you need to like, hey, slow down, put the brakes on for a second here, throwing a red herring at them and having a side quest or two is a great way to shift the pacing a little bit. If it's, hey, or if it's like, hey, this thing is happening, they made a big breakthrough, and rather than just jumping to the next thing here, having something else to do, or hey, that thing we discovered, let's go check on that. Okay, and so that red herring they heard about, they can go off and do something there. And again, it's not going to be related to the direct overall plot. they probably are going to realize that early on it's not related to the overall plot, but they might get some good information, some good rewards, some good loot, some experience, maybe even some other resources like an NPC or someone they can call in a favor to down the road. Again, all these things can be something that while it's not part of the main story, the red herring can add an element you can use. Um, it also can vary up the encounters. If you're doing Curse of Strahd, I'm just going to put this out here, and you're fighting undead and vampires and werewolves, and it's all dark and dreary, having something that shifts the tone a little bit or introduces a different monster type that they're not fighting normally here. Like all of a sudden they're dealing with some sort of a tinker with a workshop, and he's got crazy automatons that are going nuts, and you're trying to help this guy uh, save his store and rescue whatever the automatons. His cat got kidnapped by automatons and taken away somewhere, and he wants his cat back. Nothing to do with Curse of Strahd, but it's a cool little thing you can add in that may be a fun side adventure to break that sort of like never-ending stream of vampires and werewolves. Um, so again, it varies up the encounters. If you're always doing combat encounters, an investigation encounter or by solving a mystery can change up the style of encounters and give people a break from that never-ending combat. And I mean, people love combat. I love doing combat here, but sometimes it's good to just have a break in there where you're not doing the same thing every time. So again, varies your encounters. It varies the enemy types that they're running into, and so yeah, it gives you a chance to throw a little wrench in the works a little bit. It can also, in a similar fashion, there change the location or environment. If you're always in this doom and gloom place, and suddenly you're in the Feywild, and whoa, this is crazy! Colors and flowers and weird stuff happening, and um, or you have to go off and speak with, you have to get you want to go off and find some resource that's going to help you, maybe potentially in the fight here. You can go off into a totally different environment, a new location that you're not stuck in the same place the whole time. You're off on a tangent somewhere to again vary things up a bit. Um, and so there's some other things that you like, think about yourself too as a DM, as the person creating the stories. Give yourself a break. If you're breakneck racing toward this big thing, and maybe you're not quite ready, you don't have all the villains prepped, you don't have the battle map ready you want here, throw a red herring at them or pull them off on a little side quest to give yourself a break. It might be, I mean, you don't want to just say, hey, I'm not ready, let's not run. I mean, you can, obviously, that's your prerogative. If your players are okay with that, that can be a thing that you do. But if you want to play but you're not ready for that big encounter, throw a red herring at them, throw a side quest their way, and draw them off on something in there. And maybe it's a week, it's a one-off thing that happens here, or maybe it's a couple of weeks, and then they know that hey, they need to come back around to this main quest here, um, and get them a chance to do something a little bit different, give you a break for the pacing and the breakneck pacing of your story, uh, to prep a little bit more if you need it. Um, and a lot of times there are resources out there, and I'll just put it again. I plug this a lot here, but your astonishing random tables. There's lots of like one-shot adventures that are out there. You could use a one-shot adventure from a source book or anywhere else like that as like a red herring could lead them to do that, and that way it gives them. And you may, if you may, a couple of options or whatever. Um, See what they bite on. And if you've been playing with your players long enough, you know kind of the things that are going to motivate them. You can literally say, "Oh, they're always going to go help out a kid, or go rescue a kitten from a tree, or they're always going to go find some cool bit of loot, or fight some crazy powerful monster." Any of those little things they find out about, you know your players. If they always, if you throw the bait out there and they always take it, it's a great way to say, "Hey, guys, over here," and they'll go rushing off that way to go deal with it. And you take a breath and like, okay, this random encounter will occupy them for a session or two while I get this thing ready. Um, and again, it can be a lot of fun. Some of those little one shot adventures, those little crazy things, can really be a different mood or a different. It can inject some silliness or some seriousness or some horror to a game. If you're a big high adventure here, and now suddenly you're in this like haunted forest. Yes, I'd use a haunted forest. Um, or some crazy Feywild haunted thing there. Killing like some crazy Feywild serial killer shows up, and you got to go deal with it. Um, Again, those are just side quests that they are probably going to take the bait on, but you can really change things up a little bit. So if you're still out there listening in, throw some questions our way. Some maybe some places where you've done some red herrings that have worked, or other ideas, or any questions to kind of follow up on. Um, Throw them in the chat there. We'll see if we can kind of keep going there. Um, I think I think uh, many times adventure, even the published adventures, there will have some sort of built-in side quests, or they'll have some built-in like adventure ideas, or even like some of the old classic modules. They had some random encounters that were quite fleshed out, or could become something that's very important. Running into this person, or running into this people working for this other thing here in the area. Again, not the main adventure, but it's something that it also expands the world. It's a great way to showcase something in the world you haven't already provided to the players. Um, like having suddenly, oh wow, this world has strange little goblin creatures that we've never encountered before. Cool, we can see this. Or this world has um, a strange necromancer who is using zombies to clean the streets of another town or something like that. I mean, who knows? It can be something totally unrelated, but again, it can add world building elements to your campaign, to your setting that maybe the players have missed. They didn't know about this thing, and so you can use that as a way to flesh out your world a little bit, saying, "Hey, there's a rumor about this. We should go check that out." Or that sounds really weird. I don't want to deal with that. But it's something they didn't have in their minds that somebody's talking about this thing, that there's something out there. Um, and again, that's whatever you can do to draw your players into the narrative, give them options, give them ways to interact with the world. It isn't just the straight up, here's the plot, follow it. Because in games that are very much on a railroad, on a track, you're following this path here. The red herring, the side quest is a way to kind of have a stop along the way. Maybe again, you stop at a station, something happens, not related to the track you're on here, but you can go off and have a little adventure, and then you're back on the track and keep going. So yeah, absolutely, have fun with those red herrings, have fun with those side quests. What else we got here? Um, some other, uh, what are some red herrings? I know our producer there. What are some any red herrings you used in your game? Things that didn't have any relation to the whole story. You just see if you have any ideas around there. Um, Man in the Black Cloak. Oh yes, and I would say the Man in the Black Cloak. It wasn't really a full-on red herring, but it definitely was something that kept. I mean, it eventually did come full circle, and the spider groups there, they did have something to do with it overall in the end, but it definitely didn't have any direct relation to what we were doing at the time. We just kept running into these jerks, and why? But yeah, it can be that's a good point. A recurring red herring, something they just keep seeing. Um, okay, so yeah, again, this is a situation we made the connection. We kind of like forced it into being by insisting this was something important, and so it became something important. Um, and perfect example there of something you put out there as this is a one-off dude here, and then well, the players like they got to be important, they've got to be related, and suddenly you have now a plot element to bring into the story that started off as a red herring, started off as something unrelated, but you can draw that in and make that part of the story. Very good. Kyle there. We've got here. No one was told the party to rescue their princess. When you're in country there, for the princess was the name of their cat. That's amazing. Very similar. Exactly. Zach's famous red herring. We talked about it when he was on the show. Um, the bounty board, the mission board, and I think they talked about a lost goat. And they determined, oh my God, this goat must be something important. Why would anyone put up a board there for a single goat? What's the big deal? We got to find out what this goat is. Thinking it was some person who was polymorphed into a goat and they were wandering in the woods and or been kidnapped or something like that. And no, it was just a goat that had wandered away and it was the goat they used to milk for goat milk. And well, so the party spent like a couple of sessions trying to hunt this goat down, to then find out that yeah, it was just a goat, and they were really happy to have their goat back. But, but yeah, that's great there. That twist at the end of it, it really wasn't that important after all. But again, it's an adventure you have. It's a side quest you try out. That's awesome. Um, yeah, it's a great way to go with that. Um, so yeah, it becomes part of the story, like in the case of our spider group, the man in the black cloak, or it could be something that just absolutely is a throwaway encounter that doesn't matter. Um, but again, it's an adventure they're going to remember. They're going to tell stories about Princess the Cat. Oh my God. Um, and so it becomes a memorable thing. It was a throwaway thing. It was something that wasn't important to the story, but the players still remember it. We still have those things. Um, Running into, I mentioned in a game I was playing in, Zach's nightmare plague city setting. Um, Mimics were a thing. Mimics are all over the place there, and running into the minstrel on the street corner, who's singing, and light there has a bucket in front of her. The bucket was a mimic. So when she gets up to leave, the bucket sprouts little feet and goes walking after her, and so we always called it Busker Bucket. And sometime much later in the campaign, we ran into her in a tavern, and the bucket was sitting on the bar next to her. And we're like, "Buster Bucket," and sure enough, there it was. And we made sure to toss some coins in there, which it promptly ate. Um, it had a real craving for, I think it was silver. Actually, it didn't like copper so much, but it loved silver. Didn't like copper or gold anyway. It loved silver. So um, if I remember, I could be remembering totally. I could be making that up off the top of my head. I can't remember exactly, but it's one of those things of it becomes something that the player sees again, and it can be a recurring red herring that can be a lot of fun for the again. Again, it added something to the game. It didn't take a lot of effort, and it added a whole new element to the world, and the players are going to remember it. What else we got out there? Uh, Yeah. So, any other great red herrings you run into or questions you have about it? Um, Places to find red herrings. I mean, again, you can use variations on a theme from ones you've heard about or ones you've experienced in the previous campaign and use that as an idea. Using a random table, using a random generator, random encounters in the back of the book. You can just kind of flip to one saying, "Hey, here's a random guy to run into the street there." And it can be something crazy like a crazy minstrel, some crazy streaker running down the street, some strange little illusionist plying his trade and making strange little nightmare creatures floating around the street there, chasing people and scaring folks. Um, it could be uh, it can be something a recurring, like finding a letter to someone, and where'd this letter come from? And eventually, maybe find another letter to somebody else with the same signature. Now, what is this? What is this? Is this important? The players may look into it. They may not. Um, it doesn't have to be a person. It can be a thing that they find. It can be something that may or may not have anything to do with anything else, but it's something the players can latch onto and say, "Hey, I have this thing. What is this?" And if you remember, you might say, "Oh yeah." You find that that person's name is on this document here in this place that you're investigating. Who is this guy? What's going on? And so it might lead them to something that could be good information. It might have nothing to do with anything. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap things up there. Again, if you have questions, throw them out there. If you have any more comments, throw them out there as well. But I think the idea of red herring, there's lots of reasons to do it. Lots of ways to apply red herrings to your game. And again, it's never really meant to be something serious. You don't have to make it something important. It can be something lighthearted, fun, completely inconsequential, or again, it may develop into something, or it may become important down the road as you attach significance to it, or as the players attach significance to it. Um, it becomes a really a fun way to keep recurring elements in your game, and in a long time campaign, that can go a long ways toward keeping people interested, keeping people are going to pay more attention if things that happened in your first 4 or 5 sessions there have something that becomes something that matters 35, 40 sessions later. Um, and those people that, hey, I remember this thing. Here we are again. What's going on? And it can really help keep things going here. So I hope that gives you some ideas on how to use them, how to insert them into your game, and yeah, a little history lesson there. You can look up William Cobbett and where they're there. There's some other elements there historically that he may have gotten the idea from someone else previously, but he was the first person published with it that published it about it and was credited with the idea. But anyway, um, yeah, again, hope you got something good out of that. Um, as always, if you have ideas or topics you want to discuss or questions you want to throw out there, throw them in the chat here. Throw a comment on one of our videos. If you're in the Tumble Tankard, as always, our link is in the description down below there to our server there. And if you're not part of the server, jump on in. If you want to throw a question in the bar or in the suggestion box, feel free to do so. If you're on Discord and you want to throw me a message or message to any one of our leadership folks in on the server there. Feel free to do that as well. It'll get back to me, and we'll throw something together around this. And so I'm always happy to take suggestions from you for things we want to talk about or things we want to expand on. So I hope you enjoyed it. Those of you watching now in the future, stick around. Come on back, and as always, this is video number 45. There are 44 more videos to watch on all different topics around gaming. Some of them more instructive than others. But yeah, absolutely. Uh, Hope you get some more good information about it there. But hopefully we'll see you next time. We'll probably be after the New Year's. I don't think we'll be. We won't have one over the holidays there, but it'll be after the New Year's when our next one have here, and I'll make sure we get it posted out there to when it's happening. So again, have a great holiday season. Whatever you're doing, I hope it's a lot of fun. I hope you have a chance to relax, or earn a lot of extra overtime or whatever it is you're going to do over the holidays. Um, and hope you have a great time. So take care, folks. We'll see you again. Have fun and good games. Take care.